I don't know how to start this, but it's like day. I don't know why I'm looking for a watch. It's like day 156 of no Spider-Man trailer. What's the deal, Sony? Okay, things are getting like kind of weird at this point because apparently the movie's still coming out in December. I'd like to see that happen. Sony just recently sold the rights to, well, then not really the rights, but just the release rights to Hotel Transylvania 4 to Amazon. And now there's no release date, so that may not even be coming out this year. But they're not holding on to that. That was on their release calendar, but actually, if you went on their website a couple weeks ago, they had that, Venom, and Ghostbusters listed. And Ghostbusters still had November for a release date. But Venom and Hotel Transylvania just said coming out this fall. So that was before they changed the Venom date by a couple weeks. But now they got rid of Hotel Transylvania altogether. And also, Spider-Man was never on the Sony website at that time, so they're really not doing much to promote that. It does appear on Marvel Studios' website, but as of the last couple weeks when I looked, it wasn't on the Sony website. It might be on there now, but again, if it is on there, it's not going to be much promotion. It'll probably just be the simple black poster with the logo and the date of apparently coming out in December, which, let's talk about that. Is it really going to happen? As of now, there's, as far as Marvel Studios goes and as far as Disney goes, they have a big movie coming out in September, Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings. That movie was being quite praised at its premiere. A lot of people talking about it. So it's a movie that, without the pandemic, it probably would be pretty popular. But as of now, no idea. I don't know what numbers it's going to do. I mean, people are using their own measurements for how well it could possibly do, basing it on other Disney movies that have come out that have done fair enough, but I don't know if they're quite making back their marketing or, original budgets back. I don't know if they're making that money back. And granted, maybe now they're going to put different numbers into it right away, like home video numbers and streaming numbers, and the fact that they had Disney Premiere access for a lot of those. But a lot of people are just taking the release of Black Panther and saying, hey, that movie was kind of a disappointment at the box office, so maybe that means these other movies will be too. But maybe Black Widow, what am I even talking about? Maybe Black Widow was its own thing, though, because possibly the reason it didn't do too well was because nobody was interested in that movie, especially since they killed off the character in Endgame and the movie was coming out many years too late. It's possible, but then again, it's Marvel. I feel like Marvel's pretty much guaranteed a lot of money at this point if they're releasing a movie, especially a Black Widow movie. I think it had to do mostly with the pandemic. And even if it is on Premiere Access, I think a lot of people are just skipping the theaters right now and just waiting for it to be on home video and not for $30. That's just my take. I feel like it's really hard to judge these numbers. I mean, people are even looking at like Suicide Squad or The Suicide Squad and thinking that now that movie was a flop. It was a bad idea to bring James Gunn in and give him all creative control over everything. Just let him run wild. That was a bad idea because now the movie is failing. A lot of people who are Snyder fans are bringing that up, which is like, I get that you're hurt about what happened with Zack Snyder. I get it, but why are we bringing James Gunn into this? I don't know. And even then, like, that movie's not even really doing that bad when you think about the fact that it's free on HBO Max. You don't even have to pay more for it. If you already have HBO Max, it's free. It's right there. And people are like, well, maybe the property's just not that popular. Even the first movie was a disappointment. I'm like, yeah, the first one was a disappointment because it just had bad word of mouth, because it wasn't good. I've heard only good things about this new one, but I don't know. People are trying to spell it out as either it was a bad idea on DC's part, that the Suicide Squad's a dead property, that they made bad story choices in it, or that DC is just completely lost right now in what it's trying to do. But I'm like, there's a pandemic going on. I think in the end that's pretty much it. And all these release strategies which maybe even the studios are looking into. Maybe the studios don't even care that much about box office money at the point, which, I mean, sounds crazy, but maybe they are thinking more about the streaming ideas, the home video part of everything, the distribution rights of other films that they have in their catalog that they're no longer releasing in theaters. I mean, they might be thinking of that stuff more rather than worrying about how many people are going to the theater. But there's some movies where it's like they can't really let them make less money than they ever should. If this new Spider-Man movie is everything that everyone's talking about, if it really has all these characters and has all this stuff going on, which, I mean, we've heard more about almost these other movies that seem more confirmed based on who has said things. Like, I have read recently that apparently J.K. Simmons is playing J. Jonah Jameson in the second Venom movie. Which, by the way, I was not excited for that Venom movie until I realized Andy Serkis was directing it. Now I'm like, okay, I gotta see this. And then there's the fact that the Morbius director mentioned working with Tom Hardy. Okay, well, if you were working with Tom Hardy in your movie, obviously that has to be for a character he's playing, that he's played previously, in this same kind of universe, which is like the Sony universe of Spider-Man characters, or whatever the hell they called it. It's him playing Venom, so Venom's going to be a Morbius, right? Brief cameo or bigger part, whatever. He's in it. So, like, it seems like we're hearing more about those movies, but that is kind of a multiverse-esque thing. And there's already been connections before from the other trailers. I mean, the fact that, like, the original Daily Bugle logos are in the Venom trailer, the fact that the Morbius trailer had a picture of Spider-Man from the Sam Raimi universe. It's just, it seems pretty obvious that this new Spider-Man movie is what everyone's been talking about. It's probably, a lot of it's probably true. And if it is true, then it would probably be one of the highest grossing movies of all time. Like, it is the perfect moment to hit on that nostalgia for the Sam Raimi universe if those characters, or any semblance of those characters, are in it. And it would make, like, a lot of money. I mean, like, possibly, I mean, easily, like, I could see it making, like, Force Awakens money. I'm trying to remember how much money that one made versus Infinity War. I want to say, like, it would make Infinity War money, but Infinity War does have, I guess, a lot more recognizable characters for the international market, which is kind of what drives a lot of those box office numbers. But basically what I'm saying is that this Spider-Man movie would easily be one of the highest grossing movies of all time, and they know that, so they don't really want to risk throwing it out there, even if the pandemic is starting to die down, if people are starting to come into theaters. But there just doesn't seem to be any evidence of that yet. Yeah, some movies are making money, but not nearly as much as they should be. And, you know, people are still calling for, like, oh, it must just be the death of the movie theater. But it's like, no, it's this pandemic. Like, there isn't really good media around it right now. The numbers aren't very good. People are still very weird about the vaccine, and, you know, it's just, there's a lot of complicated problems right now. On top of the fact that the virus is apparently mutating, and I don't want to talk about all that, but basically what I'm saying is that there's not really any proof that it's, like, dying down. If you look at the numbers, even if you ignore the media, it's like, it's all right there. It seems like it's sticking around for a little longer. So what do? Well, a lot of people don't really want to go to a theater where you're locked in with a bunch of hacking people the whole time, right? So I think as of now, what we're waiting on is the Shang-Chi numbers. However well Shang-Chi does will probably determine if Spider-Man will be released or not. If Shang-Chi does a little better than expected, based on what the pandemic's like, then that might give the go-ahead to release Spider-Man. I mean, you gotta remember, Sony doesn't really have a streaming option like these other companies. And Disney, this time, is not doing the Disney Premier Access for Shang-Chi. So, like, it's gonna be a lot more of a true metric, you know, compared to, like, Black Widow, which had Premier Access, which was a little earlier when, well, you know, the pandemic numbers were a little lower during that movie. So I guess it also depends on if once Shang-Chi comes out, if there's a little more of a dip in the numbers again. But also the fact that, you know, like Suicide Squad, which a lot of people are using as a metric, I think that's a bad metric because that's available for free on HBO Max if you have it. If you have HBO Max, you can just watch it for the first 30 days. I think Shang-Chi will be a good metric. Just, you know, even if it does, you know, I'm sure they have a pandemic box office number in their heads right now of what it should be making. And even though it's a debut film for a character, so like the origin films, even though it's not an origin story, it's like it's the first to feature this character, it possibly means it's not going to do that well. I mean, there's been other introductions to characters that have done extremely well for the Marvel Universe. Black Panther did exceptionally well. Captain Marvel did exceptionally well. But, you know, Black Panther had the fact that that character was introduced beforehand in Civil War, and Captain Marvel was released when, like, Endgame came out. That movie, like, jumped up a lot more once Endgame was released, because that movie was still in theaters, and people were, like, watching it in theaters so they could finish their, like, Marvel marathon before Endgame. So it's like, I think that movie had a lot of rewatches just because of the fact that people had to still see it in theaters. So, like, you know, those are two thoughts in my head about maybe why those ones did so much better. But maybe at this point also, maybe all Marvel movies will do well if there's not a crazy pandemic going on and if there's not Disney Premier Access. But I guess we don't know. I guess we'll never really know what the Premier Access numbers really were. I mean, Disney kind of released a statement that I was like, "Oh, I made 60 million over the weekend," but I don't know. I guess I don't know, but I feel like Shang-Chi, since it's going to be theaters only, will be a good metric to follow for if Sony chooses to release Spider-Man or not. And that also goes for the Ghostbusters movie. That movie, I think, will be in theaters. Honestly, I think at this point they should just reschedule it, because it's like, I think people already waited so long for a sequel to that movie. They probably can wait a little longer. But I mean, I don't want to be rescheduled, but I don't see why Sony hasn't already. But maybe Sony also doesn't want to reschedule it to give this idea that they're nervous about, you know, like releasing movies during a pandemic. Maybe they want people to, like they want to seem confident to the audience members. So by not pushing back Ghostbusters, it will make people think that they're not going to push back Spider-Man either, which means like, hey, they're trusting the fact that maybe the numbers will get better and we'll be able to see these movies. That's the thought anyway. I think the only reason the second Venom was pushed back was probably because it wanted to avoid competition with Shang-Chi. Yeah, that makes sense. But who knows? I need my Spider-Man trailer.